London's Overground train line has had a huge rebrand. This is as TfL tries to make the routes more distinctive for passengers, apparently.
Yeah, it's been a little bit controversial. The new services are now divided into the Lioness line, the Mildmay line, the Windrush line, the Weaver line, the Suffragette line,
Your
the Liberty
favourite.
line. I like the Liberty line a lot more. And these all mark moments, they say, in London's history.
How have they managed to make Liberty sound naff?
I know. That's the one I dislike least. But let's look at some of the more controversial aspects of this rebrand now with the political commentator Emma Webb. Now, Emma, I've got my own least favourite name here. Do you have a least favourite name of a line? And probably more to the point, why have they spent so many millions of pounds doing this?
Yeah, almost £7 million. And actually, Emily, you took the words right out of my mouth there, because overall it's just a bit naff, isn't it? And obviously, all of them are a bit naff in their own ways. But the one that I dislike the most, surprisingly, is the Liberty line, because it seems so symbolic that the Liberty line is the stretch of track between Romford and Upminster, which is actually where I'm from. And it's where a lot of the old Cockneys and East Londoners, all of their descendants sort of live out in that direction. And it seems so symbolic that Sadiq Khan has relegated Liberty to this tiny stretch of track that is almost a shuttle. It takes about 10 minutes or less to get between those two stops. He's relegated it to the outskirts of London, where very few Londoners will ever need to travel on the Liberty line.
That's really funny.
Me, that's almost the most insulting. But yeah, I mean, it's an enormous waste of money for a rebrand that is really a bit sort of icky, I think.
I just think the self-confidence it takes, if that's what you want to call it, to spend nearly £7 million of hard-working taxpayers' money on this absolutely useless rebrand. For what purpose? Oh, to make it easier for people to get around?
It makes no difference. And who's going to say, I'm just going to hop on the Suffragette line? That's not how people think about the Overground. And it's not really surprising, because Sadiq Khan is, anybody who is in London or travels in London knows that Sadiq Khan uses TfL as his main sort of propaganda outlet. He has all sorts of politicised poems and things like that on the Underground, and everybody's sort of, it's become an ongoing joke, the don't stare signs, the various babying, patronising signs telling people to do X, Y, and Z.
Oh yeah, we're paying for those too. Paying for those too.
But Emma, isn't this getting the rebrand that London deserves? The rebrand that London voted for? Was this not in Sadiq Khan's manifesto? And he is the elected mayor of London.
How many people vote in mayoral elections? I'm not sure, but I just think that if it were put to the people whether they wanted to spend over 6 million, almost 7 million pounds of their own money on naming and rebranding Overground lines, it'll make absolutely no difference to people's lives. That's money that could have been spent on making the existing services more efficient, cheaper, and actually run on time, because constantly, I've noticed recently, particularly on the Central line, we're always talking about having a shortage of trains, and that's the reason for the delay. So there are all sorts of things that need fixing on TfL, and this is just a cosmetic exercise that is part of Sadiq Khan's personal propaganda campaign, in the same way that he made the London New Year's fireworks all about himself, all about his pet political causes. And it reminds me of the various street renamings, things like Equality Street, sounds a bit like Quality Street, but they are a bit sort of as you said, Emily, they are just a bit naff and a bit cringe.
Emma, at least he didn't call it the Sadiq line or the NHS line or something like that.
It would be the RNHS line.
RNHS line.
We should take, we could have ended up with the NHS line. We could have ended up with some worse names for sure. But, we should take a poll maybe and see what we think is the worst London Underground line, and then we should all nickname that the Sadiq line.
Oh, well, there you go. That's a good place to finish. Thank you very much, Emma Webb, political commentator. Always good to talk to you.
Do you know what my favourite line is, just from naming rather than the Bakerloo line? Because it's this portmanteau of Baker Street and Waterloo. And I just think we should just take the first stop and the last stop on the end of each of these lines and just mush them together. And then there's no controversy, then there's no politics.
For example, the Mild May line, named after a small charitable hospital in Shoreditch, which played an important role during the HIV/AIDS crisis in the 1980s. No doubt it did, but am I wrong to think that's quite random?
I don't know. I hadn't heard of it before. I mean, it might be a good opportunity to learn a bit about London's history, because I hadn't heard that. But the one that gets my goat...
Go on.
The suffragette line. The suffragette line, right? Now, there were lots of campaigns for women's suffrage, most notably, perhaps, the suffragists, who have been honoured by a statue of Millicent Fawcett. Now, she did not like the suffragettes. The suffragettes were peaceful, the suffragettes. The suffragists were peaceful, the suffragettes were violent. They bombed things, they smashed things.
To be fair, though, Tom, and I appreciate your point, and it's factually correct, but a lot of people do just use suffragette interchangeably with suffragists. I went to a girls' school, and when I was young, we used to sing about suffragettes.
On the screen there, we saw the statue of Millicent Fawcett. She's holding up this banner, courage to courage everywhere. This is how Sadiq Khan has advertised the suffragette line. With someone who wasn't a suffragette. We should be honouring Millicent Fawcett. We should be honouring the suffragists. But the suffragettes were a violent political campaign. And it was such an opportunity to just swap an eye for an E.
When you've got potential tourists, business people, and of course residents in our great capital complaining that they're worried they're going to be mugged, have their cars broken into and stolen, and potentially have assault on the street, perhaps Sadiq Khan could spend our money a little more wisely.